know. It feels like something has shifted in the atmosphere lately. I was sitting in a coffee shop yesterday just trying to get some work done, and I swear, the table to my left was talking about neurodivergence.
Oh, yeah.
Then I open up Instagram, and my feed is just wall-to-wall videos, someone pointing at a screen saying, "Do you have 50 tabs open in your brain right now? You might have ADHD."
It's everywhere. It really is. It's in the workplace. It's in our friend groups. It's all over the media. You almost feel like you're the odd one out if you don't have a diagnosis these days.
Honestly, yeah. And it brings up this massive, sort of uncomfortable question that I think a lot of people are thinking but are maybe afraid to say out loud.
What's that?
Is this real? I mean, is this just a fad? Are we just calling modern life a disorder now because we're all addicted to our phones? Or is something much, much bigger going on?
That is the question of the moment. It feels like a tidal wave.
Yeah.
And naturally, when you see a medical trend explode like this, your first instinct is, well, it's skepticism. You think, okay, this is just a TikTok trend.
Right.
But we have pulled together a really comprehensive stack of sources today. A fresh, independent review commissioned by the UK government, transcripts from a heated debate on the Jeremy Vine show, and some deep clinical data from the Dr. Jenny Clinic, ADHD Psychiatry, and historical archives from ADHD UK. And they tell a story that is so much more complex than just it's a trend.
Right, because the numbers are objectively huge. This isn't just anecdotal evidence from my coffee shop.
No, it is not. And that is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to try and cut through the noise of the headlines to understand why these numbers are skyrocketing right now, what adult ADHD actually looks like, because, spoiler alert, it is rarely the little boy running around the classroom, and the massive tension between this new awareness and a medical system that is, frankly, buckling under the pressure.
Okay, so let's start with that explosion then, because the statistics in this government review are, well, they're eye-watering.
Yeah.
And I want to understand what triggered this level of high-level scrutiny.
They are. And this is exactly why the UK Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, ordered this major independent review led by Professor Peter Fonagy. The system is just flashing red.
Okay.
To give you the headline figure that jumped out at me from the report, since 2019, the number of people seeking autism assessments has gone up by 13 times.
13 times?
Yes.
In 5 years. Okay, see, that's where my skepticism kicks in. Biology doesn't change that fast. Human brains don't evolve in 5 years. So surely that screams overdiagnosis, right? That suggests we are medicalizing normal behavior.
And that is exactly the government's fear. They're looking at the rising benefit claims, the strain on the NHS, and they're asking, are we widening the net too much?
It's a fair question, I guess.
It's a valid economic question, but, and this is a really big buddy, we have this transcript from the Jeremy Vine show that offers a completely different way to look at the math.
This was the charity founder they had on during the debate.
Right. And they argue that, yes, the graph line is going straight up like a hockey stick. But that's only because the baseline we started from was effectively zero. They call it the low base theory.
Meaning we just weren't counting people before.
Exactly. Listen to this data point they brought up. A study of 8 million GP records found that only 0.32% of people have an ADHD diagnosis on their records.
0.32%.
That is less than half of 1%.
That seems incredibly low. What's the actual prevalence supposed to be?
The general scientific consensus for ADHD in the population is around 3 to 4%.
Wait, so let me do the mental math on that. If the reality is roughly 4%, and we've only found 0.3%, that means, what, we've only found 1 in 10 people?
Roughly, yes. About 90% of people with ADHD are walking around undiagnosed. And the gap for treatment is even wider. The source mentioned that only 1 in 15 people with ADHD are actually receiving medication.
Wow.
So the argument from the experts is, this isn't an epidemic of new cases. This is a massive, messy game of catch-up.
That completely flips the narrative. It's not that everyone is suddenly getting it. It's that we're finally turning the lights on in a dark room.
They used a really powerful analogy in that interview, PTSD. Think about World War I. We called it shell shock.
Right, or weakness.
Or we just called it cowardice or weakness. We didn't have the framework for post-traumatic stress disorder. So the diagnosis rate was basically zero.
Right. If you didn't have a name for it, you couldn't diagnose it.
Precisely. Then medical understanding evolved. We stopped calling it a character flaw and started calling it a condition. And suddenly the rates of PTSD spiked. But war didn't become more traumatic. Our ability to see the trauma just got better.
It's the same with menopause.
Yeah,
It used to be just women's troubles or the change.
exactly. Now it's a recognized hormonal condition with treatment options.
So we are in that transition period for neurodivergence.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving from you're just lazy and disorganized to you have a dopamine regulation issue.
Exactly. But there is a specific demographic driving this catch-up that we really need to double-click on because the people filling these waiting lists right now aren't children.
They're adults.
They are adults, often people in their 30s, 40s, even 50s.
And this is the part I find most confusing, and I think a lot of listeners do too. The common wisdom is, I was fine as a kid. I got good grades. I didn't flip desks. I have a job. How can I suddenly catch ADHD at 45?
And that is probably the biggest myth we need to bust right now, according to the clinical sources, specifically Dr. Jenny in ADHD psychiatry. You cannot catch ADHD. It is not adult onset.
So if you have it now, you absolutely had it at age 7.
100%. It is a neurodevelopmental condition. It's the way your brain is wired from birth. But, and here's the key, just because you had it doesn't mean anyone saw it.
But how do you miss it for 4 decades? If it's a brain difference, surely it shows up somewhere.
It does show up, but smart kids, or, anxious kids, they learn to hide it. We call this masking.
Masking. We hear that term a lot. What does it actually look like in practice?
Think of the swan analogy. On the surface, you're just gliding smoothly. Under the water, the little legs are paddling furiously just to stay afloat. In school, you have structure. Your parents wake you up, the teacher tells you where to sit, the bell tells you when to move. That structure acts as an exoskeleton for your brain.
So you can function because the world is organizing you.
Exactly. And if you're struggling, maybe you overcompensate. You stay up until 2 a.m. to finish the homework that took everyone else 30 minutes. You use anxiety as fuel. You're terrified of getting in trouble, so you force yourself to focus. That's the mask. You look successful, but the internal cost is enormous.
And then you hit adulthood.
And the exoskeleton falls off. Suddenly, you have a job, bills, maybe a marriage, maybe kids of your own. The cognitive load triples, but the support system just vanishes.
It's the tipping point.
The sources are really clear on this. Major life transitions are usually the trigger for seeking a diagnosis. Getting a high-pressure promotion while you can't wing it anymore. Having a baby is a huge one. Suddenly, your sleep is gone and your routine is chaos.
Right.
Or for women specifically, perimenopause.
Let's talk about the women aspect. Because historically, ADHD was the naughty boy disorder.
Right.
That was the stereotype.
Exclusively. If you weren't disrupting the class, you just weren't diagnosed. But the data shows that women and girls often present differently. They present with inattention rather than hyperactivity.
So instead of running around, they're zoning out.
Daydreaming, staring out the window, losing their belongings, feeling internally overwhelmed but remaining quiet. Teachers used to write things on report cards like, pleasure to teach but needs to apply herself more.
Or a bit of a scatterbrain.
Head in the clouds. I think I have a few report cards like that myself. They were dismissed as personality quirks or just being a girl.
Right.
So you have this entire lost generation of women who spent their lives thinking they were just stupid or lazy, finally realizing, wait, this isn't a character flaw, this is a symptom.
And now they're all showing up at the doctor's office at once. Which brings us to the Wild West problem. Because we have this explosion of demand and the system is, well, it's not coping.
Not coping is putting it politely. We have insights here from Dr. Lisa Williams of the Autism Service, and she raises some serious red flags about how people are getting diagnosed right now.
She talks about the elephant in the room, right?
She does. The elephant is the mix of social media driving demand and the rise of the quickie online assessment. Post-COVID, everything went remote, and for many things, that's great. But Dr. Williams argues that for complex neurodevelopmental conditions, doing it purely over a screen is, well, it's risky. She says you miss the nonverbal cues.
Like what? What can you see in a room that you can't see on Zoom?
It's subtle stuff. It's the way someone enters the room, eye contact. Is it forced? Is it absent? Are they fidgeting with their hands under the table? Are they exhausted from the effort of just sitting there? A skilled clinician reads the body language as much as the answers.
And on a webcam, you're just a talking head.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And her fear is that we're getting false positives. Or just shallow diagnoses. She points out that many online providers are using assessors with less typical backgrounds, maybe not specialist psychiatrists, who might not have the experience to tell the difference between ADHD and, say, complex trauma.
Right, because trauma can look a lot like ADHD, can't it? difficulty focusing, emotional volatility.
Exactly. And if you treat trauma with ADHD stimulants, you might not help. You might even make things worse. So there is a real quality control issue here. But, and we have to be fair to the patients here, why are people going to these online clinics?
Because they're desperate.
Because the NHS waitlists are catastrophic. We're looking at numbers, depending on which source you believe, between 549,000 and 700,000 people waiting for an assessment in the UK.
500,000 people. I mean, that is a city the size of Manchester, just waiting.
And the wait times can be years. In some areas, it's 5, 7, even 10 years projected. So if you are struggling to hold down a job or your marriage is falling apart because of your symptoms, you can't wait 5 years.
There was that heartbreaking detail in the gov.uk source about the economic trade-offs people are making.
Yes, families who are literally choosing between paying for a private assessment, which costs thousands, and buying food or paying the mortgage. It's creating a brutal two-tier system. If you have money, you get answers in weeks. If you don't, you stay in limbo.
It's tragic. It really highlights the desperation. But I want to zoom out for a second. We keep asking why now regarding the backlog. And we've talked about awareness and TikTok, but when I was reading the ADHD UK timeline provided in the source pack, I realized something that it blew my mind. We aren't just dealing with a modern surge. We are trying to fix a structural mistake that went on for a century.
This historical context is absolutely critical. If you miss this, you miss the whole story. The clinical observation of attention deficit isn't new. It goes back to the 1700s.
The 1700s. Okay, so definitely not caused by smartphones or food dyes.
Not at all. In 1798, Sir Alexander Crichton described mental restlessness. In 1902, Sir George Still, basically the father of British pediatrics, described kids with an abnormal capacity for sustained attention. The doctors knew it was there.
So what happened? Why did we ignore it for so long?
Bureaucracy, stigma, and dogma. For most of the 20th century, it was blamed on bad parenting or moral failure. But here's the kicker from the timeline. The NHS in the UK only formally recognized ADHD in children in the year 2000.
2000? I was an adult in 2000. That's incredibly recent.
It gets worse. The body that sets the guidelines for what doctor can actually treat only recognized adult ADHD in 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
Let that sink in.
Yeah.
If you graduated high school before 2008, there was effectively no system in the UK to diagnose you as an adult.
Zero. It didn't exist on the paperwork. If you went to a doctor in 2005 saying, "I can't focus," they would have said, "You're depressed," or "You're anxious," or just "try harder."
That explains everything. It explains the explosion. It's a dam breaking. You have decades and decades of adults who were structurally invisible, and suddenly the gate opens.
Exactly. It's not a trend. It's a backlog of human suffering that is finally being allowed to speak. The boom is a correction of a historical blind spot.
So we know why they are showing up, but I want to pivot to what they are actually dealing with. Because if we move past the can't sit still stereotype, what does the daily reality of adult ADHD look like?
The sources use some terms that I think we need to unpack. Executive dysfunction.
It sounds like corporate jargon, doesn't it? I have executive dysfunction, but it's actually the core of the struggle. The executive functions of the brain are the conductor of the orchestra. They handle planning, prioritizing, starting tasks, and tracking time.
And in ADHD, the conductor is on a break. The conductor is asleep or distracted by a fly. So you have things like time blindness. This isn't just running late. It's a literal inability to sense the passage of time. You think a task will take 5 minutes and it takes an hour. Or you sit down to check email, look up, and 4 hours have vanished.
I think everyone relates to that a little bit, but for ADHD, it's constant, right?
No, it's disablingly constant. It impacts your ability to hold a job or maintain a household. And then there's the emotional side. This is something the headlines rarely touch. ADHD psychiatry highlights something called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD.
That sounds intense. What is it?
It's an extreme emotional sensitivity to perceived criticism or rejection. And perceived is the important word. If a boss sends an email saying, "Hey, can we chat later?" No smiley face. A neurotypical person might think, "Wonder what that's about."
Sure.
Someone with RSD might spiral into a panic attack, convinced they are getting fired, physically feeling a blow to the chest.
God, that must be exhausting for relationships.
Incredibly, if you have time blindness, you forget your anniversary. Your partner interprets it as, "You don't care about me." You feel the criticism like a physical wound, so you lash out. It looks like anger issues or narcissism, but it's actually unregulated emotional pain.
Well, this leads to the comorbidities we saw in the data.
Right. If you live your whole life failing to meet expectations, losing your keys, disappointing people, You develop anxiety. You develop depression. The sources emphasize that many people are being treated for treatment-resistant depression. But the depression isn't resistant, it's just secondary. The root cause is the untreated ADHD.
If you treat the root, the branch might heal.
Exactly. Often, when the ADHD is managed, the anxiety naturally subsides because you can finally trust yourself to navigate the world.
But we have to be balanced here. The sources didn't just paint a picture of doom and gloom. They also talked about the flip side, the superpowers, if you will.
We have to be careful with the superpower language because we don't want to minimize the disability. But yes, the ADHD brain is often incredible. The sources mention creativity, lateral thinking, connecting dots that other people don't see.
And hyperfocus.
Which is the opposite of the deficit. It's the ability to lock onto something you're passionate about and just devour it. You can work for 12 hours straight, forgetting to eat, producing incredible output.
Right.
In a crisis, while everyone else is panicking, the ADHD brain often snaps into high clarity mode. They are often great EMTs, ER doctors, entrepreneurs.
So for the listener who is hearing this and thinking, oh, wow, this sounds like me or this sounds like my husband, what do the sources say is the path forward? Is it just pills?
Medication is a major tool. For many, it's like putting on glasses for the first time. But remember, only 1 in 15 are getting it. The clinical sources emphasize that pills don't teach skills. You also need lifestyle adjustments.
What kind of adjustments?
Sleep hygiene is number one. ADHD brains often have a delayed circadian rhythm. They are night owls. But lack of sleep makes the symptoms 10 times worse, so protecting sleep is medical.
And they mentioned body doubling. I love this concept. Explain that.
It's so simple. It's just having another person in the room while you work. They don't help you. They just sit there.
Just their presence.
Yes. It acts as an external anchor. It keeps you in the room. It's why coffee shops are so popular for ADHD people. The ambient buzz and the presence of others helps regulate the focus.
And workplace accommodations, too.
Simple things. Noise-canceling headphones. Asking for instructions in writing instead of verbally so you don't forget. These aren't huge asks, but they allow that different wiring to function without burning out.
So pulling this all together, we have a government freaking out about costs, we have a low base reality check, and we have a backlog of people who have been ignored for decades. What is the big takeaway here?
The takeaway is that we are in the messy middle of a paradigm shift. The numbers look like a trend, but the data says we are just correcting a historical error. We aren't overdiagnosing. We are finally seeing the population clearly for the first time.
It really changes how you look at the world.
It does. And I want to leave you with a thought that came to me while reading through all this. We spend so much time asking, how do we treat all these people? How do we fix them?
Right. How do we cure the disorder?
But if the numbers are true, if 10%, maybe even 20% of the population is neurodivergent in some way, at what point do we stop trying to fix the people and start asking why we built a world that is so hostile to them?
That's the real deep dive question.
Do we need more pills, or do we need schools and workplaces that don't require you to crush your natural way of being just to earn a living? If the world was built differently, would we even call it a disorder?
Something to chew on next time you're scrolling through those TikToks. Thank you so much for walking us through this.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.